So most everybody's name that I see in the room looks familiar. So I think everybody's sat in on at least one of my sessions earlier throughout the semester. So, but for those of you who are watching the recording after the fact or who come in later on, my name is Dan Zuberbeer, and I'm an Education and Instructional Technology Librarian in Joiner Library's Teaching Resources Center. So really all that is, I assist the College of Education faculty and students with their research needs, but I also get to play around with some toys. I manage the 3D printing service here in Joiner Library. I'm a SMART certified education trainer, and try and assist area educators, our faculty here in the College of Ed, and our pre-service teachers on how to integrate appropriate technologies into the classroom. So today's session is aligning technology standards to the classroom. I probably should have just cut out standards. I'm only going to briefly talk about standards. I got this crazy idea last night, right before I went to bed, that, oh, I should do this whole workshop this way, but then I had to scrap everything else I had done and start over from scratch. So today's takeaways are here. So I'm going to try and, as briefly as possible, review what I've talked about so far this semester, and so hopefully that'll give everybody the right context for what I'm going to talk about the rest of the way. So the information and technology standards, that was the first session I did back, I think the first week of February. A couple weeks later was co-teaching with the school librarian. Last month in March was integrating tech tools with TPAC. And then I'll start talking about learning activity types. Have any of you heard of learning activity types? Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So if you sat in on last month's session, I talked about, or I asked the same question about TPAC. And TPAC, the Technological, Pedagogical, and Content Knowledge Framework, isn't very well known in K-12 circles. SAMR, the Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, Redefinition Framework, is better known in K-12 circles. And the reason why TPAC isn't well known in K-12 circles is the same reason why learning activity types isn't as well known. One, their learning activity types is an extension of TPAC. And to help, as it says on your screen, operationalize TPAC, to bring the theory of TPAC into something tangible that educators can bring into the classroom, bring the theory into practice. And TPAC is more of an academic thing here in higher ed, but it's geared towards K-12 educators. Learning activity types is the same thing. It's pretty well known in colleges of education and professors of education here in higher ed, but it's specifically geared towards pre-service teachers and then in-service teachers as well. And so in the same thing with TPAC, it takes sustained professional development over the course of a semester or an entire school year in order to make the most use of learning activity types. And so just like talking about TPAC last month, I'm going to bite my cheek and say I wish I could do an entire semester on, or 4, 5, 6 different sessions on learning activity types, because it takes that sustained professional development in order to implement them properly. But at the end, I'll give you guys some next steps in how to move forward to learn a little bit more about learning activity types, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up on that and learn how to use them, incorporate them into your lesson planning process. So the standards review, real quick, we way back in February, I talked about why academic standards, and a little over a century ago, there was concern by a number of different states, starting in the Northeast and then spreading across the rest of the country, where there were concerns over education, the educational achievement of students. And so individual states started to standardize their curriculum. And fast forward 100 years, now we start to see with the Common Core state standards, more and more states kind of standardizing across a national level. So those were adopted by the states. Technology standards, on the other hand, so far, up until the ISTE's refresh of their student standards, for the past decade or two, they've really defined what teachers know or need to know about digital learning. And so they can help their students teach that, or help teach their students those particular skills. So the International Society of Technology in Education, the American Association of School Libraries, the North Carolina Technology Essential Standards are the ones we talked about. And I'll throw up the 16 standards as well, where the 2007 ISTE standards were pretty prescriptive. They focused on a specific set of skills. And the new refresh of the standards it's bigger, they're more idealistic, but it also shows a snapshot in time of where we are right now in education and how technology is being used in education right now in 2015, 2016, and 2017. One of the weaknesses that we talked about is that it doesn't provide a lot of insight or a vision of where technology is going to be and how it will be used in the classroom in 5 years and 10 years. But for the most part, that's okay. So it does provide a snapshot in time and gives us as educators an idea of how or what our students should be doing and how we might be able to incorporate these things into the classroom. The American Association of School Librarians standards, standards for the 21st century learner, really appeal to school librarians' values and offering a vision for teaching and learning. And they appeal to those values through 9 foundational common beliefs, which leads into less of a focus on technology skills and more of a focus on reading, literacy, critical thinking, and inquiry. And so you get this more of a holistic view of what and how the student learns, and pushes students to take responsibility for their own learning in their own actions, which can give teachers opportunities to give students more ownership over their own learning. So not necessarily personalized learning, because we as educators can use data and feedback to personalize instruction to particular students. This is more personal learning where students take charge and they initiate the learning process for themselves. So I don't think it's ASL and ISTE are really standalone things. I see them as using them in tandem, and you'll get a pretty good idea of what can be done in the classroom in order to create meaningful learning experiences for our students. I didn't talk about the North Carolina Information and Technology Essential Standards that much a couple months ago, because even though they have been used and published since 2011, they are woefully out of date. They are the bare minimum must-have skills and knowledge critical for student success. And because that was the bare minimum must-have skills in 2011, doesn't mean they age well. And so that bare minimum must-have skills is a much higher bar, even just 5.5 years later. Co-teaching, and then I moved into after the big 30,000 foot view of technology in the classroom, I hopefully helped you identify a resource at your own school with the co-teaching with a school librarian. And so just a reminder of what a school librarian does, or what an essential school library program does. School librarians are instructional leaders and teachers. They support the development of digital learning, participatory learning, inquiry learning, and so on and so forth. And so they're more than just librarians now, especially when so many schools don't have curriculum coaches or instructional technology consultants or facilitators. Excuse me, school librarians have picked up a lot of that slack. And so we see that. And so what you saw, and remember throughout this semester, I've indicated things that align to the digital learning competencies in purple. So that's what these purple boxes are for, and what the purple text on the previous few slides have been. So in Future Ready Librarians, remember this, the Future Ready Schools initiative was launched in October of 2014 by the Alliance for Excellent Education. And the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Technology has helped expand this initiative to include librarian leadership. And so a lot of these Future Ready goals are also librarian goals. The American Association of School Libraries, the AASL, has done a great job of leading its libraries in identifying, all right, here's how education is moving forward and how we can support and strengthen what classroom teachers already do in the classroom, and how we can support and strengthen what they will do when they start incorporating more and more technology into the classroom. And then finally, last month, talked about integrating tech tools with TPAC. And I'll throw all of these up. In a nutshell, TPAC, remember, is just aligning the content, your content knowledge with your pedagogical knowledge, and then your technological knowledge. And how those three content or knowledge areas or domains interplay with each other and give and push. And so and like I said earlier, in order to implement this well, TPAC needs to be, to have that sustained professional development, because it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. SAMR, on the other hand, is a little bit easier to understand, and that's why many K-12 educators are more familiar with it. So those are the examples on the right. And remember, we mentioned that the substitution and augmentation levels of technology integration tend to have more of an impact on teachers' efficiency and effectiveness rather than having an impact on student learning. And so that administrators have know that, and have a tendency to start evaluating teachers on, are you teaching above that dotted line that you see in the graphic? And that's unfortunate, because not all lessons, not all activities need to be modified or redefined. If they did, teachers would be more burnt out than what they already are. And so augmentation and substitution are okay. And so implementing, like I said, with this iterative process with TPAC, it does take time. It's more for the lesson design process than it is in reflection. And so that's why so much more time is needed with TPAC than SAMR. SAMR you can use in the reflective process and think back on, all right, what did this technology really do? And then so it's easier to see more of an impact or more relevancy with SAMR when you reflect on your own teaching than TPAC in the lesson design process. Because we as educators, we're pretty good at creating meaningful learning experiences for our students, whether it's high tech or low tech or no tech. And so to incorporate a completely new system into our planning process, um, it takes time. And so that's why many educators tend to lean towards SAMR, because it's easier to implement. So that's a quick overview. And so, like I was saying earlier, it started with that big 30,000 foot view using the standards, and then identifying a resource that you have in your own school to help you understand the standards and how help you support and strengthen what you're already doing in the classroom by helping you identify and choosing and evaluating appropriate technologies and then integrating those into the classroom. And then we started talking about, all right, how do we actually do it? So we talked a little bit more about the theory last month, and now it's more of the practical experience with the learning activity types. So before I get to that, I do need to show you or review one other thing, the planning process. So does this, and I'll give you a minute to look it over. But the creators of the learning activity types created or identified this 5-step planning process. And so I'm curious to see how closely does it resemble the planning process you already do as an educator when you develop lesson plans. Pretty close, not so close. Is there anything that anyone or any one of these steps somebody would swap out for something else? And so this is actually pretty common for a lot of educators. They did a lot of research on this in talking to a lot of K-12 educators and talking to a lot of their colleagues who are professors of education and how they developed this and put this down. So really, to give you another way to look at it, here's a little table. And so this, the Iowa Department of Public Instruction developed this table to help their teachers about 5, 6, or 7 years ago in using and implementing the TPAC framework. And so when you look at this, it's things that we already do as educators. All right, it just makes sense to us. And whether or not we were taught this in our teacher preparation program or not, this is, I found with my discussions with other educators, this is kind of how we gradually learn how to develop our lessons, choose learning goals, looking at the context that we're teaching in our students' learning context, we start making our pedagogical decisions. And then we select activities, and then our assessments, and then we select the tools and resources, whether it's technology or print resources, other books from the library, databases, websites, and so on and so forth, and then bring those into the lesson. North Carolina actually taught this for a short period of time, but they don't anymore. And I'm not quite clear. I haven't heard why yet. But I still like this. I still think it's relevant, especially when we're talking about TPAC and integrating technology into the classroom. And so there's some flexibility with this as well. Selecting assessment strategies can move up to the second step. I mean, you know your learning goals, so you have an idea of how you want to assess those learning goals, and so they can go 1, 2 back to back, and then pedagogical decisions can get pushed over to 3. Lesson activities can get pushed to 4, and then tools and resources. The one thing that's not very flexible is selecting tools and resources, especially when it comes to technology. That all should always come last. And so I've harped on my attendees in the Teacher Toolbox series this semester, and I'll say it again: learning first, modern second. And so if we can do the first 4 steps really, really well and align our learning goals with our activities and align our assessments with those as well, then we've done our job. Bringing technology into the classroom is just icing on the cake. So like I said, I had a crazy idea last night on how to redo this. And so I was scrambling this morning to do everything else. So, and create this from scratch. But, and I did that because aligning standards to the curriculum, that's the easy part. It really is. So, and I was just looking for something more to give you guys. And so I think I found that with learning activity types. But aligning technology standards to the curriculum, and here's a couple things with digital tools, whether it's an app or a web-based resource or a mobile device. I mean, you've got the ISTE standards on top, and then the AASL standards in the middle. And I use the Common Core here, but I'm sure you can think of easily think of a essential standard in your discipline area that you could substitute for the Common Core standard at the bottom. But use technology, including the internet, to produce and publish, so to create, to interact and collaborate. Use creative and artistic formats to express personal learning from the AASL. And so aligning these things and matching these up, that's pretty easy, especially when you gain some familiarity with the technology standards, and you'll see those connections between your discipline area and those technology standards pretty quickly. Same thing with student research. Looking at the ISTE standards at top. Students plan and employ research strategies to locate information and other resources. AASL, continuing inquiry-based research process. Common Core, conduct short as well as more sustained research projects. And some of it comes down to those keywords, whether it's research or tools or so on and so forth. But like I said, doing that's the easy part. It's, all right, how do we really put this into practice and align our objectives with our activities and our assessments, and then how do we bring technology into that? And so it comes, that's why I wanted to share this 5 steps to lesson planning using TPAC. Because one, it's something most educators already do, and 2, I think it helps bring the theory of TPAC and bring it into the classroom, and makes it more manageable because they're in terms and in steps that we already understand. And the one thing I'm going to point out is number 2, these make pedagogical decisions. And on the bottom, in that bottom row, it shows consider the 8 corresponding continua. What all that is defining the context surrounding your classroom. What context are you teaching them? Your students' learning context. And here are those 8 continua. And this is also why I do not, and you may hate me for it or be annoyed with me for it, but why I do not make any specific suggestions as to for technology tools. And I don't do 30 apps in 30 minutes or 60 tech tools in 60 minutes because context matters. I don't think people who sit in who sit in on those webinars really gain a lot when they write down all of these resources and then start to answer all of these questions about their learning, their teaching context, and then think, boy, none of these fit. I can't use any of these. And so that context matters. And so I don't know your context as well as you do. I would be happy to talk to you about it, and we can go through these the spectrums of these 8 corresponding continua. Like, all right, is this lesson or activity student-centered or more direct instruction on the other end of the spectrum? What type of learning you have? Is it divergent? Are kids going to be creative? Is it going to be freeform? Are they on their own? Or is it more convergent where you're developing a knowledge base where it's statistics, it's facts, it's true-false questions, it's multiple choice? Do your students have a lot of prior experience with this? Is their background knowledge in this particular topic pretty well grounded, or do they need some more help with that? How long is this going to be? Is this for a day? Is this activity going to span a week? Is it over the course of a unit? And so on and so forth. And so all of those things have an impact on the types of activities you choose. And it's also going to have a tremendous impact on the technologies you integrate into the classroom as well. So that context matters. And that's why I don't do a lot of, hey, use this tool or this app or this piece of hardware. And so I hope you don't hate me for it. But I think by understanding some of these concepts and ideas that I'm throwing in your general direction throughout the semester and today, you should be able to make some pretty good informed decisions on your own when you encounter a new technology tool. So let's explore those learning activity types. So I kicked out the direct link. If you've got the Google slideshow open in front of you, all of these things that I'm talking about are linked in that slideshow. That's one of the reasons why I shared it with you. If you don't have it open in front of you, I pushed out the link into the chat box. And so these learning activity types, like I mentioned earlier, they're here to operationalize, and that's the creator's term, operationalize TPAC, to take the theory and put it into practice. So what I would like you to do right now is to, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see at top there's what are activity types, and so there's a research paper that Judy Harris and Mark Hoffer have written. They're professors of education at the College of William and Mary in Virginia. There's also some more that operationalization. I think I just invented a new word. With the planning with activity types PDF there, bridging that gap between theory and practice. And I'll let you guys look at those on your own time, but go ahead and look at the learning activity types that you see on the left-hand side. And choose whichever one is most appropriate for you. So if you're elementary, maybe you want to look at the K through 6 literacy. I used to be a social studies teacher, so I'm going to pop that one open. Takes me to a new page. It'll be similar process for all of these. Open up into a new tab. So it'll have a little bit of a description at the top. So they've identified 44 social studies learning activity types. So they're more than willing to update these whenever they get feedback from educators. So, and they're all broken down into different aspects. So they start off with the basics, knowledge building. So more convergent learning going on in these facts, dates, statistics, and things like that, to more divergent ways where the students take more ownership over their own learning, and they're able to be more creative and really start to create things on their own. And so as you'll see, there's 44 here in social studies, and I think the most activity types they've identified is almost 150, and I think, if I remember correctly, that's in the K through 6 literacy. But please don't get intimidated by that. You would not be expected to use all of those in a semester or even in a school year. It all depends on what you're teaching and the standards you're working from. And of course, the learning objectives you develop based on the curriculum you need to teach in the classroom. But in each of these tables, you'll see the activity type on the left. And again, just like the 5-step planning process, they use words in terminology that we as educators already know and understand. And in activities, these activities are gonna, and then the brief description in the middle, you're gonna find some things that, hey, I do that already. And then on the right-hand side, they're going to give you some ideas for possible technologies you might be able to pull into the classroom to support or enhance the content you're teaching or enhance the activity and to make it a more meaningful learning experience for your students. But you'll also see that those possible technologies, they're pretty general. And they did that for a reason, because technologies come and go. If they had started labeling and did this specifically for Google tools, well, in the last, let's see, the social studies one was published in 2011. If they had listed specific Google tools throughout this, in the same time period, Google killed off over 100 apps and services in that same time frame. And so it become outdated pretty quickly, and they'd have to continuously update it in order to keep it relevant. But if they generalize a little bit and give some examples, like, for example, the web-based data sets, such as the CIA World Factbook, or such as Movie Maker or iMovie, I don't even think Microsoft supports Movie Maker anymore, if I remember correctly. But we know what it is, and we know that there's other apps and other tools out there, video editing or audio editing software out there that we can use and incorporate into the classroom. So even though it's general, we know what it's talking about, or should be able to find something pretty quickly that's related to these possible technologies. And so as you scroll through and go down, you'll notice that the activity types, for the most part, start with a verb. Engage in a simulation, compare, contrast, conduct an interview, answer questions, create, complete, assessment, quiz, test. And so a lot of these, as you go down, you'll start to notice that they start on, those verbs are straight off of Bloom's taxonomy. And so they'll start at the top of the page or the top of the document with more lower order thinking skills. And then as you scroll down and look at the different activity types and the descriptions, you'll start to see that they become more and more higher order thinking skills. So I'm curious, which which learning activity types are you guys flipping through right now? Science? I haven't looked at the science one in a while. I'll open that one up. And you'll see that some of these activity types are cross-disciplinary, like read text. That would also take notes, discuss. Some of these, of course, are applicable across disciplines. Yeah, I think the K-6 literacy is the one with, I think it's 144 activities, which they identified. And they identified those through their own research and talking to K-12 educators, or in K-6 literacy, K-6 reading teachers. And so it's, they tried to be as comprehensive as possible. So what do you guys think? Do these, using these activity types and then the possible technologies that are given, do you think this could be a useful resource? Do you see how, is it relevant, I guess is what I'm asking. Good. I'm glad you guys find it helpful. So I think it gives you an idea. And so this is, these learning activity types, I'll be honest, they were developed for pre-service teachers within William & Mary's College of Education. And Amy, that is exactly what I was going to say. It's a good place to go and get started and find ideas. And which leads me to the next steps. So there's a couple other things we can do to build on that, the basics of understanding the activity types that we ask our students to do in the classroom. And so they also have these assessment tools, and I'll kick the link out to you. But you'll see it's on the left-hand side of the page, near the bottom under related resources. And so one thing you can do is to become familiar with these rubrics for assessing the TPAC evident in your own lesson plans. You can kind of self-assess in the reflection process. And so that's one of the things they wanted to do to operationalize TPAC, because they knew it was valuable in the lesson development process, but it also needed to be useful in the reflection process. And so this was even before SAMR even got big, and is recommended to use in the reflection process. But this rubric can also help. And so everything on this page has been studied to death, and has been tested for multiple types, as it says at the top of the page, tested for multiple types of reliability and validity. And so they're pretty solid. Another thing is the next one underneath that, evident in observed instruction. So you can, and I know how tough it is to go and observe some of your colleagues during the planning period. But if you do get the chance, you can use this as a starting point just to see how your colleagues are integrating technology into the classroom. And it can be a conversation starter, and just and just start the conversation with, hey, I saw you did this, can you explain why? And I don't know how often teachers nowadays are involved in interviews when hiring new educators at your school. So even if you aren't, this rubric for interview responses can be a good basis for when you talk to colleagues, whether it's at a conference or via Twitter and your PLN, or PLCs across when everybody in your school district or county get together and start talking shop. So you'll be able to, this rubric will help you understand whether or not your colleagues and peers know what they're talking about when it comes to technology integration into the classroom. And so it can be a useful tool also to reflect on and assess your own teaching as well. So also on the learning activity types, there's also these short courses. And from the assessments page and under related resources, right underneath assessment tools, there's the short courses link. And so as you see here, these short courses are for pre-service teachers, elementary, secondary. And like I said, these Harrison Hofer, they're professors of education, and so they work mostly with pre-service teachers. They developed the learning activity types and ensuring these short courses for pre-service teachers. I talked to them at a conference in November, and they said they were trying to get a short course for in-service teachers completed and up and running by the end of January, but it looks like they've run into some delays. The only difference, they told me, between these short courses for pre-service teachers and for in-service teachers is that there's more scaffolding in learning about learning activity types for the pre-service teachers than there would be for in-service teachers. And so these courses, they have an introduction, what the purpose of the course is, the structure, the goals. The second module is identifying existing lessons. And so for you as an in-service teacher, you'd be looking at the lessons you currently teach and looking at the alignment of your learning goals and the standards that you address, the types of activities you bring in, the assessment tools, and then the technology tools incorporated. And so you're looking at your own lessons and reflecting on how well do those things align. And so from there, module 3, you analyze and improve your existing lessons. So just starting small, finding something that you were thinking about changing or adapting or modifying anyway, and then diving deeper into the learning activity types taxonomies that we just looked at, and then practice using those. And so you can tell based on just those first 5 of the 8 modules that there's a lot of scaffolding there. And so some of that would be eliminated for the in-service teacher short course. And so if you do decide and I encourage you to do so, if you do decide to run through this on your own time and take charge of your own professional development, I'm sure you're going to find some things in there that, oh, I can skip that, and I can skip that. And it'll cut down on the amount of time you spend working through these modules. They're asynchronous, they'll work at your own pace. You can leave them, come back to them whenever your schedule allows. But I would recommend checking those out if you want to learn more about the learning activity types. I'll come back to the pedagogy wheel and save that for last. So from here, with those possible technologies, so you get some ideas from the learning activity types, but then we can go to places like the Common Sense Media's best of lists. So I'll push that link out to you guys. And so these are categorized, they're vetted, they're looked at by professional educators. Excuse me, and then they're categorized by age group, preschool, little kids, big kids, tweens and teens. There's best apps, character development, websites, and so on and so forth. And they have a few more lists as well. The American Association of School Librarians also has their own. So they have one for the best websites. They also have one for the best apps for teaching and learning. And so these are going to be just a starting point. There are so many other resources out there. And once you get your bearings looking at some of these websites and looking at things that are vetted by these organizations, then you can always reach out and branch out from there via your PLN to Twitter, to your colleagues across the hall, and so on and so forth, to find more cutting edge things, if that's what you're looking for. And not that it's cutting edge, because it's been around for a while, but the pedagogy wheel would be another resource. And it's called the pedagogy wheel because it specifically looks at iPad apps. And I don't like to talk about it a lot because, as you can see, it's big, there's a lot crammed in there, and so it can be a little confusing. But if you look at it right here around the middle, you'll see remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. So you see Bloom's revised taxonomy there. And then from there, I'll use apply as an example. You start branching out, there's some action verbs you can use to help develop your learning objectives. Some activities you can use. And then there's your technology tool. And so it's working on that order that we talked about in the lesson planning process. Objectives, your activities, assessments, activities/assessments, and then how can we integrate some potential technologies that we can integrate into the classroom. So on the PDF version of this form, all of these would link out to these apps. Most of them, or all of them, are for the iPad. Many of them are also available on Android devices as well. And that's another reason why I'm hesitant to talk about it, because they're not device agnostic. It does depend on what resources your students have. And very few of these are available on PCs or Macs. They need to be iPads or iPhones or mobile, Android mobile devices. But I think once you understand that you start with your learning objectives here in the apply, and then move on to the action verbs to develop those lesson plans, and then find some activities ideas for activities, and then some potential technologies you can use. I think once you understand that, the pedagogy wheel can be an effective tool. But I would recommend starting with Common Sense Media, AASL, best websites or best apps for teaching and learning. So that's all I got for today. Like I said, I try to keep it short. Yes, please explore. And so while you're thinking of any questions or comments or concerns, we did review what we've talked about so far this, or what I've talked about so far this semester with the technology standards, that big overview of technology in the classroom, identifying resources within your own school, namely the school librarian who can help you integrate these technologies, and then a framework, whether it's TPAC or SAMR, or the technology integration matrix, or the RAT framework, whichever one you decide to choose, there are options out there. And then no matter which framework you use, I think the learning activity types we talked about today and you started to explore today can help you take that theory and bring it into your practice as an educator. And so we also identified those next steps and how to move forward. And so I really think the learning activity types, and it's the same thing I mentioned earlier with TPAC. I wish I had more time than just a one-shot session to show it with you. Yeah, Debbie, I get that a lot, especially when I talk to our pre-service teachers about the pedagogy wheel. It's too busy. It's too jam-packed, I should say. And so it's difficult to understand what's going on. But I think once you, and like I was saying, I wish I had more time. I wish I could do work through these short courses with educators over the course of a semester, and give you guys an opportunity to become more familiar with the learning activity types, because I think they can be a pretty valuable resource in the lesson design process. And while you're still thinking of questions, comments, or concerns, if you are interested in a Twitter chat, the Eastern North Carolina Instructional Technology Collaborative, which is between my colleagues over in the College of Education, Holly Fales and Jason Whited, the instructional technology consultants over there, and we started our blog, which is still developing and growing, but we're starting up some Twitter chats tonight as well. And so they'll continue every second Wednesday of each month. And so there's the hashtag up there. If you're in the Pitt County area or even just outside, they'll also be at Barnes & Noble tonight. And so if you're a bit intimidated by Twitter, as I am, you're free to show up at Barnes & Noble tonight and participate in tonight's Twitter chat face-to-face with Jason and Holly, and then Lauren Boucher, who's an instructional technology facilitator here in Pitt County. She'll be there as well, and they'll be moderating the Twitter chat tonight. And I mentioned our blog. It's still growing. We're still trying to figure out what we want to do with it. And we're always looking for more K-12 educators here in the East to help us out so we can develop it into a resource that all educators here in Eastern North Carolina can use. So there's my contact information again. Please reach out to me if you have any comments or questions. I encourage it. And before I forget, here's the link to the very quick survey. for today's session. Same one you've been filling out throughout the semester. We appreciate the feedback. I always like to hear about how I'm doing as I conduct these sessions, but we're also very interested in hearing about what other tools and topics and concepts you guys would like to hear about in semesters moving forward. Hopefully we can develop some more Teacher Toolbox series sessions around your suggestions. You guys have any comments or questions for today? I never feel like I have enough time, and I could go on and on about this, especially if especially with something like learning activity types or TPAC, and everybody in the room said, no, I haven't heard of it before. No, Debbie, I haven't heard or looked at the site Prodigy yet. I'll have to make a note and take a look at that. I will. Thank you for the tip. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll wrap things up and then I'll stop the recording, but stick around in the room for a few more minutes in case anything else comes up. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed the session. And if you are a part of the PLC, I encourage you to design and share your lesson plans with the group so we can give you feedback and help you earn the rest of those continuing education units. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.